After a recent talk hard on Westworld, I went down the rabbit hole, watched Future World to follow up. Michael Crichton stuff kind of took me into this 1970s pre Star Wars era sci fi. And Andromeda Strain was Michael Crichton's book that was adapted. And we have a great film here directed by Robert Wise. And I say great, meaning it's so far ahead of its time and ambitious for what it was trying to accomplish with some of the technology, conversation about viruses and medicine and exposures and pandemics and outbreaks. A very, very interesting film.
Father, we brought you here. You're sick.
In a true biological crisis, which our exploration of space could bring about, the present lunar receiving laboratory might prove inadequate.
So I have to be honest, I hadn't watched this film in so long. I forgot most of the details. It was interesting in concept how there's this little outbreak that happens in this little town and they don't really quite know what to do. They isolate this meteorite, which basically ultimately has this green strain of bacteria, but all of this is very slow moving to get to that point. The outbreak in the town is early and very interesting. You feel like you're watching something like The Stand or maybe a Contagion or even like a Walking Dead type film. Like what actually happened here? And not everybody is clear on what's going on, what they should or shouldn't do. And people are dying like in aircrafts and everything like that around it. So very, very intense. Arthur Hill and James Olson are kind of the two
Recommend calling a
leads here
wildfire alert. All members of your team have been cleared and are now being called in.
as they put together this little team of scientists. They're going to go out to this remote station that's kind of underground. And they have these great graphics where they're tying all that together, working through levels of exposure and clearance of how they're going to basically be medically treated so they're not actually causing any infection or spread of anything. So really, really interesting dynamics. And like I said, a lot of computer graphics and stuff that was way ahead of its time. I will say I found that sort of like the movement of the team after the outbreak to get to the point, that middle was so slow and enduring how to get to. So what I enjoyed about it was the fact that how far we've come in like, a little over 50 years, like the concept of we're going to irradiate your entire body. We're going to burn all the epithelial tissue off of you. We're basically going to give you a probe, if you know what I mean. Don't be nervous while you lay naked on this thing, and we're going to explore any type of issue that could have bacteria. I mean, it was very intense and very naive to how we would be able to handle clean rooms and operating situations and medicine, years later. So that was fascinating. It was almost like a time capsule of where we were in that regard. The computer graphics and stuff was again a step forward. Again, predates Star Wars, so a lot of really great sets, great designs. There's a little laser thing. I don't know why the weird security in this place was just interesting. The fact that this woman has this epileptic reaction to these red lights, I thought was weird because it only works because she keeps quiet about it. Very dramatized in the trailer. Like this is all very late in the game. It already compromised some of the scientific examination of the specimen. Overall, the suspense and thriller elements of the film that is being billed at, and this is why I probably haven't watched it again, it's just not there. It's really much a very bland, dry, medical sci-fi type drama that would have felt more intense and thrilling in its day. I think what Robert Weiss did, though, was he really brought together some really good performances from everyone that's involved. There's that interesting dynamic, though, where they changed the one character to a woman. Her name is Dr. Leavitt, I believe. Levitt. And she's very off putting. It was really strange that they wanted to make it a woman, but then they had her behave kind of like a guy. In that she's kind of arrogant. She talks about her kind of like her slutty background. She's kind of nasty to other people and intolerant. There's really nothing about her that emanates feminism or a woman character. So it was just odd that they would just switch that. So it just kind of show that some of these things to do that is dating all the way back to this movie 50 years ago. Overall, the concept of wildfire, that we'd have this, 5-story facility below ground to isolate an alien species and then kind of kept quiet. Like, I do think it was interesting that they were trying to keep the outbreak so secret from everyone. And we talk a lot about like things like the moon landing and why people believe it was fake and whatever. I'm like, oh, the film kind of is scratching at that itch of conspiracy theory. It's scratching at that government cover up and that part. What was interesting is that there was also like this. The failsafe was like nuke. I thought was like really. I totally forgot all about that. Very extreme. Like that was crazy. Like, oh, I got the idea of, oh, we're gonna have this problem. We're just gonna set off a nuke. And by the way, they give the single guy the key to deactivate it under this weird um, theory that they have based on the testing that somehow they can scientifically determine he is the best person to do that. And I don't know. I don't get that. Doesn't really quite work. And then, of course, the organism itself is, it turns out, very, very fragile. Not really as difficult to overcome, because if your blood pH is sort of out of this narrow range, it's either too acidic or too basic. They have a crying baby and they have an alcoholic, and they're the two survivors. So they're basically fall backwards into determining this is the sweet spot for it to basically become harmless. And I'm like, all right. I mean, okay. The biggest problem for me is there's all this time wasted with all this experimentation. They have monkey and rats and all this stuff that's happening. I'm like, there were vultures. They lived. The vultures were fine. By the way, there were vultures in the opening sequences. They were fine. So I don't feel like there was a lot of good examination of like the blood specimens from the baby and the old man. And you would have been able to figure out the pH rather quickly through like urinalysis type testing, things that seem pretty commonplace. Now, again, 1970s, it wasn't really addressed in the film well. So maybe that really wasn't well thought of, but that was my issue with the film for the most part. Overall, I have to kind of say it's one of those that didn't age particularly well. 3 out of 5 is probably being kind. You kind of have to be into this type of film and really appreciate science fiction for its time, or it's not going to even feel that good. So a 2 out of 5 would probably be more standard for most people. I enjoy that kind of stuff, so I kind of lean more into the 3 out of 5. But the rewatchability on this is like nil. I don't know that I would sit through this again anytime soon unless there was a reason to watch it for a review or a show or something like that. Very dry, very bland. It's solid in its execution. It's ambitious in what it was trying to accomplish. But at the end of the day, is it really a thriller? Not really. I mean, even with the laser zapping the guy, will he not stop the nuke or not? Do I care? I mean, I'm not even sure I understood what would happen when the nuke went off. Like, it was discussed with these weird maps because they kind of feel like they just don't care about humanity. They're just willing to do all of them. Like, oh, okay. I mean, fine. We're back into the conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat type stuff with this movie. Yeah, it was fine. So I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. I'm probably leaning a little high, to be honest. Don't feel like it's aged very well at all, and not a film that I can really highly recommend as rewatchable and that kind of thing. So it was fun watching. It's part of this, as far as this experience. I led me down. There's a link in the description for things like 12 Monkeys. Obviously, I watched Westworld and Future World, and just kind of this type of stuff in these genres has been kind of fun. But overall, this is a lot weaker than I expected it to be. So that's my general take on it. Look to hear from you guys. I'm Pops.